Oh, what a week we've had on the Elias Macko Show, and we're continuing here on our Friday edition. You know, true story. If you remember the last municipal election campaign, it wasn't too long ago, right? November? Plante versus Coderre versus Holness. You all remember that. And one of the things throughout the campaign that I thought was so interesting, right? We'd interview the contenders. Well, Coderre didn't show up. He refused to do our show for some reason. He wasn't doing much media. But, you know, when we would talk to the candidates or we'd be talking to a counselor and that kind of stuff. And one thing I thought was, I'll be very honest, I would have a little chuckle here because I'd get text messages from listeners and they were so passionate about this subject of the nature park and the Technoparc, right? And they would say, Elias, ask about the birds. Ask about the situation. And I was like, wow, you know, and I'm like, you know, this is an election campaign. There's issues of homelessness and what to do, cars versus bikes. And there's so many big issues, especially Plante versus Coderre, the main theme. But I said, man, there's this group of people and they're so passionate about this Technoparc. They keep sending me notes. So, you know, the story's back in the news here. As Mayor Valérie Plante has promised to triple the size of a nature park. And a conservation group, TechnoparcOiseaux, says they welcome the plan, but they still find it confusing. They're urging the mayor to have more details. So let's find out more. Katherine Collin is from TechnoparcOiseaux. I hope one of those passionate people that was texting me. Katherine, welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I love because when you've got passion, you got a story. So give our listeners the story, the fable, the history of the Technoparc and this promised nature park.
Yes, so the Technoparc wetlands and adjacent federal lands are some of the last remaining sweeping unprotected green space that we have on the island of Montreal. And it's especially dear to the hearts of birders, bird watchers, but also just general nature lovers in this pandemic time, because we have over 216 different species of birds that we have documented over the years in that area. So it really is a beloved site for many bird watchers and nature lovers in Montreal.
And every now and again it gets threatened, right? Wasn't there a plan also for a factory on this land from the federal government?
Yes, that's correct. Meltech Innovation was slotted to develop over what we call Monarch Fields. That's a portion of the federally held land that's leased to the airport authority to be developed, and they thankfully withdrew their plans to build on the site just a few weeks ago in January.
Okay.
So we're relieved at that, but as things stand now, nothing is formally protected. So we are still very eager to see formal protections put in place for the entirety of the space.
So at least for now, no factory on these Monarch lands. But let's talk about the plan, what Mayor Valérie Plante has promised, what you have heard that's definitive that you like, and what more details you want.
So we were very encouraged that in the top 10 priorities for the first 100 days of Plante's administration, the enlargement of what is called the Parc Naturel des Sources was mentioned by Projet Montréal. At the time, in late October, we were told by Projet Montréal that 175 hectares would be protected in the area. And this, of course, would require federal stakeholders to also be participating because the entirety of the green space is roughly 215 hectares. So we suspected that there would be some support from the federal side, and 175 hectares, while it's not 215, that was encouraging to us. That was a good minimum baseline for us to move forward with. Recently, we haven't heard much in the way of specifics about the size of the space that will be protected. We've been told that it's going to be tripled. To your question of why is it confusing, it remains confusing to us because this Parc Naturel des Sources that's referred to has never been formally launched or registered as a nature park in Montreal. We know that there haven't really been concerted budgets given to the park over the years, so it's not entirely clear to us what the park is, what its contours are, and needless to say, it's less clear what tripling that space would mean. So we're very eager to see the details of that. We realize it's a complex situation because there are so many different stakeholders, but we really hold out hope that all of the stakeholders will do the right thing by the people of Montreal and preserve the space.
We're with Katherine and Collin of TechnoparcOiseaux. And Katherine, you're telling me about not knowing the boundaries and that kind of stuff. Because I've always, whenever we have a guest on, I'm like, geez, it seems like this is a wonderful area to go to enjoy nature. Mm-hmm. But I don't necessarily know, well, geez, am I trespassing when I go here? Like, what's the deal, right?
Yeah, so just to reassure people, first of all, the Technoparc wetlands are accessible by public transport. Bus 72 gets you right there. And the vast majority of these lands are public lands, whether they are municipally held lands or federal lands. There are some private owners, but the trails that run through the Technoparc, particularly in the federal sector, those are all on what are known as public lands. They're still susceptible to being developed, which is our big concern, but they are accessible to the public, yes.
And let's talk about the development. So many things at play here, right? You mentioned federal land and possible factories, but let's not forget the Technoparc. That's, you're the first kind of sort of word in your group's name. TechnoparcOiseaux, Technoparc,
right.
in the borough of St. Laurent. A lot of tech companies, a lot of companies there, lots of employees in the area, and there's always a risk. Hey, another business wants to move in the neighborhood. Let's expand. Where do they expand? Well, that land, right? So what's the balance here? Because, of course, if you're the borough of St. Laurent, you're like, yeah, you want to bring businesses to your borough. You want those tax dollars. What's the balance here?
Yeah, so we've always said that we are not opposed to development. We are opposed to development over the last remaining precious green space that we have. And there are a good number of lots that are currently available in already what we would call mineralized areas, so brown lots that do not have high ecological value, north, for example, of the sector where all the green space is. So we would encourage all developers in terms of their own kind of civic responsibility and appeal to public demand, that they go for those brown lots and already mineralized spaces rather than building over green space.
Katherine, as we wrap up this interview, I want to perform an exercise with you and our listeners. Everyone who's driving, do not close your eyes, okay? If you're driving, you keep your eyes on the road, you keep driving, listening to the radio, we love you. But if you're at home and you're at your desk and you just need a little bit of meditation here, you're going to close your eyes. And Katherine, give our listeners here, for someone who's going to go to these Technoparc lands and immerse themselves and maybe become a bird or that kind of stuff, if they go there on a regular afternoon, what are they going to see?
So generally walking through, for example, the wooded section, you will hear the chirping calls of northern cardinals. You will hear the almost glass-like, chime-like quality of the American tree sparrows. You may hear wild turkeys clucking. You may hear the hoot of a great horned owl. You may also hear different raptors that are in the area, mourning doves, and of course the black-capped chickadees that almost come to your hand to be fed at our 3 feeder stations there. So a very peaceful scene for sure, and an easy way to escape the bustles of city life, just right around the corner and right in the heart of Montreal.
As you say that story, I get a text message from a listener. Technoparc wetlands are magical. and so you're saying that story, it sounds magical, and I get a listener writing in, it's magical. Well, we have the story. Katherine, thank you for bringing the passion to the program.
Thank you for sharing that passion with us. It's greatly appreciated.
Katherine Collin of TechnoparcOiseaux.